Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Jose here, welcoming you to another episode of Amazing Worlds, where today I am going to be reviewing Eldrick, the Sailor on the Seas of Fate, which is a mess. It's a mess. So, it is book 3 in the reading order that I'm going through the Eldrick Saga, but I recommend, if you're kind of interested, if you haven't done so, check out my video, link in the description below, the reading order of the Eldrick Saga by British author Michael Moorcock. Now, this is book 3 in the new latest Golan's editions, but it's actually comprised of 5 different stories, and the timeline of Elric is a mess. So this is comprised of the titular Sailor on the Seas of Fate, which is from 1976. Then we also have the Dreaming City, which is from 1961. Then a third is a short story, a portrait in ivory from 2007, go figure. Then While the Gods Laugh from 1961. And finally, The Singing Citadel from 1967. So 5 stories which kind of follow on chronologically from each other in the internal chronology of the Eldrick Saga. But as you can see, it is a mess. Trying to dive into the Eldrick world is complicated, so that's why I recommend checking my video if you haven't done so. Now, there are very different stories. So our main story, Sailor on the Seas of Fate, is a Moorcock multiverse story. So this is the different eternal champions, the different incarnations of these people that fight against the lords of law and chaos to sort of maintain the balance of the universe, which is kind of an overriding theme in Moorcock's multiverse. So we have Erekos, we have Hawkmoon, we have Corum, and we have Elric. So these are kind of different, like I said, personalizations of these eternal champions that in their own universe they do, and different time periods they have these struggles, but they have often the worlds cross, they meet, and here they are going to fight some forces of evil. They'll get together and they kind of realize who they are and what they have to do. Then, after that, the events of Sailor on the Seas of Fate, we have the Dreaming City. Now, the Dreaming City kind of follows on from Fortress of the Peril, which I already covered in my previous Eldrick video. It's a short story about Eldrick going back to the capital city of Melnibone, where he put his cousin Yirkun in as ruler of the kingdom, and he's going back to conquer it back and take his kingdom back from his cousin. Now, I found that as a slightly inconsistent with the story, because it was Elric who actually put Yirkun in command, and now he's going back to try to conquer the city. The motivation that didn't quite make a lot of sense to me, and the story ends very tragically, which then sees Elric in a portrait in ivory, which is a very short story. It's only a few pages long. It's not really worth discussing. And then in While the Gods Laugh and The Singing Citadel, sort of moping about the events on the Dreaming City and sort of encountering different love interests that he spurns just to continue traveling the world of the multiverses and trying to figure out what his place in the world is. So this particular volume of the Eldrick Saga I found quite disjointed, whereas there was a fairly strong consistency in the first Elric of Melnibone and Fortress of the Peril. This was kind of all over the place. There are a lot of internal time jumps and years passing between events. Like I said, it's 5 different novellas, short stories. I read it in the Kindle, but in physical format it's only about 300 pages long, so it isn't that long. And with Eldrick, what you get is more the ideas rather than the execution. These are very grandiose ideas, which are explored very succinctly, very quickly. There is very little world building. There are some fight scenes. There's loads of demons, demigods, fights and stuff, but it's a little bit all over the place. Michael Moorcock, he recalls writing some of the stories within the space of a week while he was bottle feeding his newborn babies. So and in the swinging 60s in London, I suspect the guy was on something, and I don't mean just coffee. So I found this collection a little bit disappointing. However, I have to recognize that taking this idea of the multiverse and doing it justice and developing in full novel format would have been an impossible task. Michael Moorcock would never have been able to do it, I don't want to say properly, but allowing it to grow and take the time that it needed. Now I can see how someone like Brandon Sanderson, with his whole Cosmere stuff, is kind of doing a similar thing, but he's giving it the space to breathe that it needs, but only a writing beast like Brandon Sanderson could do that. Yes, Michael Moorcock was incredibly prolific, but he was more into the short story novella type thing, and I guess it's not everyone can do something like that. I guess we'll never see the likes of Sanderson again, and the guy's got quite a few years to go. Now, just going back to the Eldrick world, it's not exactly a happy fantasy setting. Elric is very much a morose, down on himself, almost, you can see that this is gonna end not very well. He's a tragic hero. He's still dependent on his sentient sword, Stormbringer, the Eater of Souls, to keep on slaying enemies and sucking in their souls to continue gathering his life energy, because he's a very feeble person who requires the constant use of drugs to keep himself going. So, it's not exactly your clean cut superhero, and he's got a fairly bleak outlook in the world, about the world, of the world. Pardon my English. Every so often in the book you get a few one-liners here or there that kind of sum up the philosophy behind it. And at one point, one of the lines, and I'm misquoting here, but it's something along the lines of, we do not fight to win, we just fight to keep the fighting going. Like, that's the philosophy behind this. You're not fighting for good, to defeat evil, or the other way around. It's just so that things keep in balance and just keep the struggle going. So it's not exactly a cheery prospect diving into the Eldrick saga. But I'm back to the parallel with Brandon Sanderson. What Sanderson is doing now, Michael Moorcock did to a greater or lesser degree of success, is still to be determined, 50 years ago. So, credit where it's due, and I think that's why I think it's important to go back to the fantasy classics and revisit them every now and then. This wasn't an entirely super enjoyable read for me, but they're very short stories that you can sort of dip in and out. So maybe I'll give it a month's break or so, and I may go back to the next volume around May time. I think from my reading guide, it's about 7 books. I've got 4 more to go. I would like to finish the whole thing before the end of the year, so I'll be picking the next one up at some point. But anyway, these are my thoughts, my opinions, my review on The Sailor on the Seas of Fate. What a cracking title for a fantasy story, isn't it? Anyway, as usual, please like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you think. I just love the engagement. I wish there was more. Hey, what can you do? Take loads and loads of care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.